Price, a second visit, tops for the match, and tops Gerwyn Price will get it. Price has beaten cool hand Luke Humphries here in the quarterfinals in Riyadh. Humphries wait for another World Series of...
He's a world champion, a Grand Slam winner, 3 times, a man who stood at the top of the PDC World Rankings, and in May 2026, during a Premier League semi-final in Sheffield, he stopped the entire match, walked to the edge of the stage, pointed into the crowd, and refused to throw another dart until a fan was physically removed from the building. Not because he was losing, not because things were going wrong, because that is what life looks like when you're Gerwyn Price. From the outside, it looks like a man who made it. The money, the recognition, the walkouts, the titles. But spend any time watching how this plays out, the health scares, the crowd battles, the psychologist appointments, the very public admission that he sometimes needs a break from this, and you start to wonder, what does it actually cost to become Gerwyn Price? Because sometimes the things people dream about come with weight nobody sees. Gerwyn Price was born on 7 March 1985 in Markham Carefully, a South Wales village. The kind of place where identity runs through rugby, community, and a certain way of carrying yourself in public. And he was a rugby player first, not casually, properly. He played hooker for Neath and Cross Keys in the Welsh Premier Division. He had a spell at Glasgow Warriors as injury cover in the Pro 12. He played rugby league for South Wales Scorpions and won a Roo Challenge Cup final with Cross Keys in 2012, scoring a try. He represented Wales at under-19 level. This was a man built for competitive sport, comfortable with physical pressure, with crowd noise, with the expectation of performing in front of people who cared deeply about the result. He didn't drift into darts. He was advised by Welsh darts professional Barry Bates to enter PDC qualifying school in January 2014. He won his tour card at the second event, beating 6 opponents in a single day. Within 2 years, he was inside the PDC's top 32 on the Order of Merit. Within 4 years, he won his first major, the 2018 Grand Slam of Darts, and he did it in the most Gerwyn Price way possible. With fist pumps, with roars, with intensity that some people found electric and others found uncomfortable. That tension between how he performs and how he's received has followed him ever since. By 2021, Gerwyn Price was PDC World Champion. He beat Gary Anderson in the final, 7-3, at an empty Alexandra Palace, the crowd stripped away by COVID. He became the first Welsh winner of darts' most prestigious title. He'd be ranked world number 1 on 3 separate occasions between 2021 and 2022. 7 PDC major titles, 3 Grand Slams, a World Grand Prix, 2 World Series finals, a World Championship, 2 World Cups representing Wales alongside Johnny Clayton. From the outside, this is what success looks like. The walkout music, the big stages, the sponsorships, the prize money, the recognition. People imagine that once you reach that level, everything gets easier. The doubt fades. The pressure becomes manageable. You've proved yourself, so surely the rest flows. That's not how it works. Because visibility doesn't reduce pressure. It multiplies it. And for someone with Gerwyn Price's personality, the intensity, the emotional investment, the refusal to stay quiet when something bothers him. Being visible means being a target. People see the rewards. They rarely see what comes attached. Gerwyn Price didn't become famous quietly. The fist pumps became his trademark. The celebrations after winning legs, loud, physical, unapologetic. In a sport where the old tradition was to throw and step away, Price performed. He filled the space around the Oche with energy that split opinion sharply down the middle. Fans either loved it or they didn't. And somewhere along the way, the image became the story. The booing started building. It became a regular feature at venues. At the 2023 World Championship at Alexandra Palace, it escalated badly enough that Price produced ear defenders mid-match, wearing them to block out the crowd noise. He didn't shy away from what that meant. He threatened never to play at Alexandra Palace again. He called for the World Championship to be moved away from the historic North London venue. He spoke openly about how close he came to withdrawing from the 2024 tournament entirely, amid real concerns about the reception he'd receive. And here is where it gets complicated. Because the character he'd built, aggressive, defiant, emotional, made those confrontations almost inevitable. The persona that drove him to the top was the same one that made him a target. When you perform the way Price performs, people form opinions. Strong ones. And once the booing starts, it feeds itself. Crowds who want a reaction find it easy to provoke one. And Price has never been someone who absorbs it quietly. In Sheffield this May night 16 of the 2026 Premier League, a fan began whistling during his semi-final against Stephen Bunting. Price stopped mid-round. He walked to the edge of the stage. He pointed. He gestured to security staff and made it clear he was not throwing another dart until the matter was dealt with. The fan was removed. The rest of the crowd cheered. Bunting, who had been just as disrupted, backed Price entirely after the match. He was direct about it. Booing and whistling have no place in the sport. But the moment still happened. And it will keep happening. Because that's part of the deal now. The stronger your image becomes, the harder it becomes to step outside it. What Gerwyn Price has been willing to say publicly about the psychological side of his career is unusual for an elite player. Most people at his level protect that part of themselves. They talk about hard work and focus and belief. Price has been more honest than that. Before the 2025 World Championship, he admitted he'd been working with a sports psychologist. He said it had definitely helped. He acknowledged that in previous years he'd been too negative on himself, that the pressure was something he had to actively manage, rather than simply endure. That admission matters, because it tells you something real about what competing at that level actually involves. In Leeds, during the 2026 Premier League campaign, Price lost to Johnny Clayton, his own World Cup partner, and posted on Instagram afterwards. He mentioned waiting on hospital results. He used the phrase health-wise, "I'm not in a great place." He later clarified that his subsequent World Cup withdrawal wasn't because of health reasons, but the original post was still there, and the pattern around it, missing the World Cup for the second time in 3 years, being honest about not being in a great place, told its own story. When he reached a European Darts Trophy final in March 2026 and lost 8-3 to Wessel Nijman, he posted again. He said, "I think it's so tough mentally. Need a break from this. Not a meltdown, not a crisis, just a public moment of honesty from a man who has been performing under scrutiny for over a decade. Pressure doesn't always look dramatic. Sometimes it looks like continuing, showing up, performing at the highest level, week after week, at 41 years old, in venues where a portion of the crowd is hoping you fail. People imagine the pressure starts on stage. Most of it starts long before the walk-on. There's something Price said during the 2025 Premier League campaign that deserves to sit with you for a moment. He'd just won night 6 in Nottingham, beating Luke Littler, the world champion, in the final. He was relaxed. He was honest. He told Sky Sports, "The last couple of years I've been negative on myself. I try to be more positive now, and it shows on the board." That is not the language of a man who found it easy. That is the language of a man who has been working, privately and persistently, on the gap between what he's capable of and what his own head sometimes allows him to do. His former World Cup partner Johnny Clayton described him as the linchpin of the Welsh pairing. 7 PDC major singles titles, 44 PDC titles across his professional career. A record that places him 8th in the all-time list of major winners. And still, in 2026, still competing in the Premier League, still making finals, still capable of averaging over 100 against the best players in the world, he described his own form as a little inconsistent. Not from a place of false modesty, from a place of genuine honesty about what it takes to stay at the top when the target on your back has been there for years. Because here's the thing about success at this level. It doesn't settle the questions. It raises them. When you're the world number one, the expectation is to remain the world number one. When you win a world championship, the question immediately becomes, can you win another one? People stop asking if you're okay. They start asking what's next. And for a man who has always carried his emotions visibly, someone who celebrates loudly, who confronts problems directly, who doesn't perform contentment he doesn't feel, that accumulation of expectation carries real weight. The strange thing about success is how quickly people get used to it. In Sheffield, last week, Gerwyn Price had a fan removed from an arena because they were whistling while he was trying to throw. Some people will see that as thin-skinned, a champion unable to handle a bit of noise. But look at the full picture. A man who played professional rugby before most of his rivals had ever stood at an Oche, who won a tour card at qualifying school on merit, built himself into a world champion from scratch, and has been openly honest about the psychologist, about the health worries, about the moments when it gets so tough mentally, in ways that most elite players never are. He said he wants to compete at the highest level for the next 10 years. He's 41 years old. He's still in the Premier League, still making finals, still stopping matches when something isn't right. Maybe the answer isn't that Gerwyn Price is too sensitive for success. Maybe the answer is that he's never pretended success doesn't cost anything. Most people who reach the top perform contentment, for the cameras, for the fans, for the image. Gerwyn Price just doesn't. And whether that makes him difficult or honest, whether it makes the crowd love him or boo him, he's never stopped throwing.